Not sure if this was the right way to install this wicked ass spoiler for that extra downforce, but now there's holes in the trunk and the quarter panel. Find the corner. It's a window! I didn't shatter it. Nice. Yeah, so how does that look? Maybe wash it with the side scoop on there and just see what we think of that. So there was some doubts cast in the last video as to whether we got screwed on this car or not. And unfortunately, you guys are right, we did get screwed. You ever hear the term more money than brains? We bought this car strictly for the engine. This engine is coming out and going in a Bronco. They did put the brakes on upside down and it didn't have steering. They never actually drove it anywhere. I think they did one burnout. Basically what I want to do now is bring it back to the day they left off. They plastic dipped the sunroof. Like, this is actually extremely satisfying. We've got our Holley that we're gonna throw on there. We finally did it. We've got our most popular, as voted by you guys, Flex Fit hats. If you want one of these yourself, head over to thebossgarage.com. We'll be getting different styles in the next little bit, but this is about as good as it gets. Nice dark colors so it doesn't show the grease right away. Mesh at the back, perfect fit. We also have the Here We Go key tags and a bunch of other stuff, so definitely check out thebossgarage.com. Here we go. You can use fishing wire too to like pull it in between. I think we have a layer of grace with that plastic dip behind there. Or not.
White car? What's going on?
Oh.
No, we put the paint off of it.
What's that?
That's paint.
Yeah. Well, good thing we're
going back on. Not as menacing now.
No, it's not as menacing. I don't think that's Bondo. I feel terrible knowing this thing was in an accident.
You would feel terrible?
No, not at all. This is actually extremely satisfying. It'd be more satisfying if it was black underneath, but Back on the Mustang, we've got our Holley that we're gonna throw on there. Keeping in mind when you are grabbing the Holley, only the Terminator Max does the drive-by-wire. And because this is a true Boss, I'm like 99% sure. The filter relocate is on top of the filter housing that comes straight out, not coming out on an angle. So that filter relocate, I don't know why they did it. They didn't need to at all. And it's got the Boss for the idler. That being said, I really like the intake. I mean, they named it after me. I can't take it off. So the Holley does work with the drive-by cable on the factory throttle bodies. I really wanted to keep the Boss intake. So we're going drive-by-wire, which is the max, and this is a 2011 to 2014. You gotta be specific on that too. These would be your coil drivers, I believe. So you got 2 coil drivers that go in between. They plug into your harness. We've got O2 sensor and the screen. This would be the computer, I believe, your main computer. So the blue wire is your map sensor. If you don't have the plug-in sensor, I think they give you the option for both, and then your different plugs. Right now this is manual, but we are going to put it in a Bronco. And then this would be your VVT controller. So that would do your variable cam timing, but you can lock that out if you want to. And then this is basically just all your harnesses. So coil harness, injector harness, drive-by-wire harness, and your main engine harness, and your power harness. Here we go. Alright guys, everything underneath the hood is very straightforward. We have one ground that you have to connect to the cylinder head. The main power for the Holley unit has to go directly to the battery. Generally I use the 2-post battery because your battery acts like a capacitor. If there's an issue, then it kind of protects the unit itself, but because this battery is so high it hits the hood that we had to go to the front post. We've got the VVT, so that's the extra harness on it. The main harness just comes with one exhaust cam sensor on it, which is more of a cam sensor than it is for your variable valve timing. But because we've got the variable valve timing, we just put that into the Wizard, and it's very straightforward. Everything else is labeled. We've got bank 1 on the passenger side, bank 2 on the drivers, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for the cylinders. Oil pressure's down below. If you can use an LS oil pressure sensor or one of the Holley pressure sensors. It doesn't work with the Ford oil pressure sensor. The coolant is at the back, and so is your crankshaft position sensor, but everything is labeled and it's very straightforward. If you start at the front and work your way back, just take your time and try to do a neat job. Wizard is very straightforward as well. You put in the displacement, whether you have variable valve timing, whether you're doing transmission control or not, and basically that's it. A TPS auto set so that the computer knows where your foot is, and then it's good to start. So let's start the car. Hey, eyes up here, eyes up here. Let's see if this thing starts. Oh no, I just lost clutch. Well, we can't move now, but anyway, it'll start. Yeah, that's good, look at that. Fancy lights and stuff. I mean, don't look at that. That's all fun.
That's ear piercing.
You will be pulled over, I guarantee.
Yeah.
That's just shit burning off the exhaust, so it's all good. fluid still on the exhaust manifold. Oh, no. Claim to fame, especially the Coyotes, that it could rev up to like over 7,000 RPM, and it just goes against your senses because you're like, nah, that's too fast. But you're like, you're at 6,000, you're like, I got like another 1,300 RPM to go. There's a fitting. Oh, it's hot under there. There's a fitting. I guess the hose goes into like a 90-degree fitting, and then it's just a O-ring, and then there's a clip that holds that in place. And they obviously didn't put the clip in there. They figure that just that O-ring is enough to keep that hose from popping out. It's kind of warm there because somebody fired it up and was revving the piss out of this thing. So let's have a coffee and then we'll pop that hose back in again. I guess we'll have to bleed the clutch somehow and then go from there. Sounds pretty good. I really love the sound of this car. Here we go. Okay, a couple things we got to do yet on our Brembos. Because the flex line goes so much farther down now, their solution to not having their flex line long enough is to just loosen the brake line and have it hanging out here. Look how flexible that brake line is. It just moves back and forth, no problem. What we're gonna do is bolt this back to where it's supposed to be. And I did buy new flex lines, but I made the mistake. I bought these ones that still don't work. So we're gonna do the next best thing because we don't care about this car. We're gonna grab the ones off the F450 outside because I think they're nice and long. And I also already grabbed the alternator plug because that does not come with the Holley system. So the alternator plug for the 450 on the Power Stroke is the same. So we can plug this in, give it key power. That should start charging. And then burnout time. Here we go. Okay, so now next time you're at the AutoZone and there's that awkward silence while the guy behind the computer's trying to figure out if those wiper motors fit your blue car or if it's just red cars, you can let them know, hey, anybody comes in asking, will the flex lines off of an 08 F450 Super Duty Power Stroke fit my 05 V6 Mustang if I do this 6-piston Brembo conversion kit? And you'd be like, they do. But I gotta be honest, it's not a direct bolt-on. There's a little bit of fabrication that you got to do, and I don't think that it's approved by Ford Motor Company or Brembo or your mom or your priest. You probably shouldn't do it, but I'm gonna do it so I can do a burnout. Here we go. Now, in all seriousness, not a good idea to mismatch brake parts. We're doing this because I'm replacing the suspension anyway, so I doubt this will work eventually anyway. The brakes are no good as they are. And we basically just want to drive it into the trailer and onto some ramps and stuff for the paint shop, and then worry about it when we get back. Those brake lines for like the GT500 from where I saw them online were like $400 US. Kind of steep for a car we really don't give a shit about. So, we'll see what happens, but this will work for now. Watch me do it, don't do it. I mean, who puts $400 brakes on a V6 Mustang? I'm not gonna lie, it does fit pretty good. That went somewhere like that. Oh yeah, we'll put that in there, and then that into the, oh, it's perfect. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so we've got our caliper on the right way. We've got flex lines on that flex while it's turning. And at this point, I want you to pause the video and comment as to what's the next thing they did wrong. It's a little game. Every time we finish something, stop, write down, okay, the next thing he's gonna have to fix is this. Think about it. What's gonna be the next thing? That's right, you guessed it. Brand new Brembo conversion kit deserves a brand new master. And we don't need to read the instructions to say that we need to bench bleed that. Nah, it's only 2 bolts, throw her on, bro. We'll get brakes, no problem. Okay, we got our brakes bled. We've got our master back bolted up. And now we've bled the back of the brakes. Now you have to comment again. Stop, comment. What's the next thing they did wrong? Can you see it? Can you see it? Can you see it yet? Right there. The link for the solid rear axle is in the way of the exhaust, and we can't mess with our exhaust sound, so we better just drop the link. So this is definitely an issue. This is the clutch popping out of this little 90 because it's just a little clip that holds that in place. The clip isn't enough to hold it. So put a zip tie around it to try and hold it. That still doesn't do it. So we'll put a couple zip ties around here and tie it to the bottom, keep it from popping out just for now. I think there's a steel upgrade you can do for that because that's a cheap ass piece of shit. You can't fix it with zip ties. You're just not using enough zip ties. Here we go. And yep, because the line popped out of the slave cylinder on our clutch, of course now the master's out, so we got a new master for it. I could not get fluid to this master, so the technical way is to just put a vacuum on it for 4 or 5 minutes and then pump it and do that multiple times. Could not get it, so I took this master off, dunked it in oil, just take a little hose, put a hose down so that the in and the out are both under oil, and then you can kind of bench bleed it. Would not do it, so new master, here we are. Very simple to take out on the Mustangs. It's 2 bolts up here, and then your 4 bolts. Disconnect your brake, leave your whole brake assembly just kind of hanging there, and then disconnect your 2 lines on your master, and then this pulls right out. It's very straightforward. And this must have been a recall, maybe Ford, I don't know. In order for this to hit the clutch neutral safety switch, you just stack up 3M tape until it hits it. And well, it's nice and soft, it's cushiony, right? It's not that definitive. This car is awesome. I am very, very afraid to actually drive it, but it's very fun to work on. Go, we got clutch. Didn't even have to vacuum bleed it, just kind of pumped it a couple times and it feels great. You gotta hook up some cooling fans and burn it. Okay, so don't put your body kit on until you're done building your car, because putting your stupid car on the hoist takes like a half hour. So let's see what's underneath. I bet it's gonna be bad. We do have an oil leak. I wonder if rear main seal's leaking. Okay, so there was a couple questions as to whether this was an actual Boss or not. So the Mustangs, if you look over here, it has the alternator up higher because the oil filter comes straight out. And the F-150, as you can see with Scott, the oil filter comes and shoots out straight out the front. So I think some of you guys thought it wasn't the real Boss because they put the oil filter relocate on it, and they put the oil filter relocate on it because they had money to buy an oil filter relocate kit, even though it doesn't need it, because this just spins on to where the normal filter would go. The alternator's up high, and then you can see this idler. This is the extra idler. If you can see my finger, the F-150s don't have this idler in the timing cover, and they don't have the Boss for it to actually thread it in. So because the idler and the oil filter, I imagine it is a Mustang engine, And right now we don't have any reason to think that it's not a real boss. The only way to really find out is to pull the heads and check the sodium filled exhaust valves, I think, or whatever they're filled with. We should just put it on a dyno and see what kind of power it makes. If it makes as much as the boss, then it's a boss. We did, however, get screwed with our Tremec because this says Getrag on it. And unless Getrag bought Tremec and I didn't know about that, then I think we're in trouble. I think we're also in trouble with the... I see stainless bolts. They put stainless bolts holding the transmission to the engine, as long as they're stainless metric bolts. Because if those are stainless standard bolts, then they're gonna have messed up all the threads in the bell housing because the Coyote, I believe, is metric. Drive shaft, nothing to talk about. We might have an oiling issue. It smokes, but the oil is kind of running out of the exhaust there. That's not good. And at the back here, I don't think this is the stock diff cover, because with the suspension down, the traction bar hits it. But it's shiny. But as for the car, like there's a lot of gravel stuff on there from us pressure washing and kind of hitting the gravel and bouncing up. But there's no rust to speak of on the car. Like the car itself is in really good shape. So other than some botched exhaust, but that could be from us. Like I poured a lot of oil down in the cylinders. Hopefully that's it. It's just burning that off and we just need to do a burnout. But we're having trouble getting all the air out of the brakes. So we'll check all the brake lines, make sure that there is nowhere that it's leaking anywhere, and then we can try and pull vacuum on it and get some. I'm getting just like a trickle of fluid out, but not enough to stop the car, so it's kind of important. Yeah, here we go. All right, so a couple of you guys mentioned the squeal. Unfortunately, it's not a supercharger. I took the belt off and squeal went away, but some of you guys said it was a vacuum leak, and that would make sense that this oil fill cap for a jug of oil did not seal on the electrical tape, and that could very well be our vacuum leak. So that probably messes with the tune a little bit too, because the math is kind of mixed up. Fixed it! The more that I'm working on this car, the more I'm really worried about driving it. Maybe we should just pull this engine out. All right, we've got fluids staying inside. It's the worst part of any job. We got brakes now, and we've got coolant in there. We got it running. It's not charging, but look, it's charging. So only one thing left to find out. Can it do a burnout? Alright guys, so she does a burnout. I got a fancy diff cover, but I don't think it's a limited slip. I thought that the other tire would break free first, but it was this tire that did it. So we got some new tires for it. We got a new suspension for it because the suspension is so bad. Just driving it over here, clunk, clunk, clunk. So that's coming up. I got the brakes working, but just slightly. You can see all the rust is off of it again, but I still got some air in the system. So yeah, it was hard to get into gear. So we got some issues to figure out yet, but we're gonna send it off to paint because there's an opening for it. So we're gonna paint it or wrap it or something. Either way, we need to address some issues with the clear coat and that. For now, it's a good little engine. We're happy with it. Oil pressure was good, coolant was good, and it does do a burnout. So guys, when you are planning a project, really plan it out. This was no thought involved in this car at all. I don't know. I don't want to harp on the guys that, it's funny seeing everything they did wrong, but it's kind of disappointing and sad at the same time that so much time and effort was put into something. I still got a long way to go to fix this thing, but we'll take you guys along for the ride anyway. Either way, all I care about is that engine. Remember, get out there, get filthy, work on it, but do it in a smart way, guys. Here we go.